Hi, I'm Dr. Allie Taylor, a business psychologist and consultant with Orange Kiwi. Orange Kiwi specializes in helping owners at three important points in a business's life cycle: scaling through growth curves, selling their business, and engaging in family succession. Of those three, the two most difficult are selling your business and engaging in family succession. And that's why we have author Bo Burlingham here today. He's the author of the best-selling book, Finish Big: How Great Entrepreneurs Exit Their Companies on Top.
To tell you the truth, when you write a book, you're not really sure whether or not it's any good until you begin hearing back from people. Here was somebody who was getting a doctorate, who knew a lot, and the fact that it had resonated with you was very important to me.
I was looking for someone to explain the owner's experience to me that I kept having with clients. And when I read Finish Big, I jumped for joy because somebody finally got it. The owner's experience and understanding the academic or psychological phenomenon behind it were really powerful, particularly the 4 phases of transition that you've identified.
One of the things I learned in writing this book and from interviewing all these people was that my conception of what an exit is was wrong. But what I realized was that's a phase of the business. And in fact, there are 4 stages to that exit phase. The first stage is what I call the exploratory stage. And that's when you figure out what kind of an exit you're going to want at some point in the future. It's important to have some idea of where you're going on this journey. The second stage is what I call the strategic stage. That's when you are building your company and building into it the kind of qualities that are going to allow you to have a certain kind of exit, or at least allow you to have a number of different options at the end. The third phase is what most people think of as the exit, and that's basically, it begins when you call up your investment banker or your broker or your accountant and say, look, I'm ready to sell the business. And that stage ends at the deal. But for the owner, that's not the end of it. There's a whole other stage after that. You call it adjustment. It's really what happens when you go from being the owner of this company, who everybody looked up to being somebody whose phone calls don't get returned.
It's significant from a psychological perspective because all 4 of those stages are part of a transition. And the last piece, they're really adjusting to the new normal and what that next stage of their life is going to be.
Right.
And when you think about those 4 stages, the exploratory phase is actually really crucial in order to go through that well. And Bill Nyman's an example of somebody who he didn't have an exploratory phase.
Well, Bill Nyman is obviously a very sad story. I mean, people have heard of Bill Nyman because of Nyman Ranch, which was the company that he started. He got into a situation that's called a forced sale. Namely, his investors had decided they wanted to put the business up for sale, and they wound up just getting one private equity company that was interested in buying it. They sold it to this private equity company, and Bill was the spokesperson for that company for a year. Eventually, after about a year, he decided, no, I've gone too far. I can't stay, I can't continue. And so he left, and he left with, a cow and a steer and his founder's stock, which turned out to be worthless. And that is an example of a bad exit.
It's a very sad story, particularly because it doesn't have to be that way. You identified 7 elements of a good exit.
The 7 elements really have to do with the factors that I saw that allowed people to have a good exit. The first one was that these were people who knew who they were, what they wanted, and why. And because of that, they were able to make good choices about what they were doing. The second factor was that these were people who built sellable companies that they were able to sell when they wanted, to whom they wanted, for a price that they considered fair. The third factor was they gave themselves enough time, measured in years. That was particularly true for those who needed a successor. The fourth quality was that they had help from people who had been through it themselves. I'm a big fan of peer groups. The fifth quality had to do with all of the different people who had been on the journey with them. And it's very important that after you exit, you're able to feel fine about whatever has happened with them. The sixth quality really had to do with the buyer, namely that the people who had good exits really understood before they sold the company why it was that the buyer wanted that company. The final factor really was the people who had good exits were able to transition to do something else that was as meaningful to them as they had felt when they were in fact running the business. They were able to move on and still have a very happy and productive life.
So one of the other things I appreciate about your work, Bo, is it really helps set the stage for what needs to happen in order to have a good exit. The question I would get is, well, how? And so we built a framework we call the M3, and it helps owners look at 3 domains: my business, my money, myself, and 22 variables in those domains that give them the opportunity to do a robust exploratory process and communicate through a set of guiding principles what they do and do not want in transition to their advisors. So their advisors are then able to help them effectively move through the strategic and execution phases while they're building resilience for the adjustment phase. What we really want is them to find lives of satisfaction and significance beyond the business, or what you say,
Well, we want them to be happy.
being happy.